Hello and welcome back to Tell Me Your Ghost Story. I'm your host, Cassie Askin, here with my co-host for the day, my best friend, Emily. Everyone say hi, Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi, everyone.
And we went to a Tyler Henry live show, an evening of hope and healing with live audience readings together. And we're going to tell you about it. But before we dive into our experience at the live show, I wanted to give a little background on Mr. Henry himself for those of us who might not be familiar. Emily, you would characterize yourself as someone who was not familiar with Tyler Henry before I dragged you to this show. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I'm going to start off with the biggest question that I had at the start of this. Before I became intimately familiar with Mr. Henry himself.
Intimately?
Yes, I feel intimately connected to him after what we all went through. Does he have a real last name or his last name a first name? Because I don't trust someone whose last name is a first name. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
But luckily he does have a real last name. Tyler Henry is a first name, middle name situation. His last name is Colowin.
I feel like there's some beef with his dad.
I kind of felt that too.
He said a couple of times oh, I love my dad, but then you could see the pain behind his eyes.
Yeah, and his mom is very involved in what he does, and he talks about his mom a lot and never talks about his dad.
That was kind of my interpretation.
Maybe his dad doesn't want to be involved, or maybe he hates him. Who knows? He did say on a podcast that he frequently gets called and introduced as Tyler Perry, which is pretty hilarious. The Hollywood Medea, if you will. But anyway, Tyler is a clairvoyant medium, which means he receives intuitive mental images from those who have passed. He discovered he had his abilities at 10 years old when he had a premonition of his grandmother's death. He continued to have what he calls moments of knowingness, but he didn't fully understand where they were coming from, but he would kind of just blurt them out to the kids at school. He remembers one day walking the track in PE, and he asked a kid if his grandpa liked peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. And the kid freaked out because, yes, his grandpa loved peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. He says the response from kids and eventually parents and teachers was a mixed bag. Sometimes they were super interested in his abilities and would ask him for personal readings, but sometimes it kind of rocked the religion boat and people frowned upon his abilities, and sometimes he was made fun of and bullied. He says one time a kid and his friends were coming to beat him up, and Tyler shouted out, "Your aunt knows that you were crying with your dad last night." And the kid just starts crying again because he was, in fact, crying in his dad's arms the night before over the death of his aunt, which we can get real psychological with that one. That kid was definitely being a bully because he was going through some trauma and didn't get accurate help. But anyway, Tyler went on to graduate high school and take college classes to become a hospice nurse as he believed his calling was to help people comfortably transition to the other side. At the same time, he continued to cultivate his ability by doing private readings at a local bookstore. Words of his talents quickly spread to LA, where celebrities began to request private readings, so much so that E! Network approached him to produce a show about him and his readings with celebrities entitled Hollywood Medium. On the show, he read for Snooki, Nancy Grace, the Kardashians, Lil Jon, RuPaul, Casey Musgraves, Lisa Vanderpump, Howie Mandel, and many more. Now, I love Howie Mandel. Honestly, I think he's hilarious, and no one can deny the chokehold that Deal or No Deal had on all of us in 2005 and beyond. And I'm a huge fan of the H3 podcast, and Howie is a friend of the show, so he feels like a friend to me. I value his opinion, right? So I watched his reading with Tyler Henry, and he had a particularly interesting story come through that I had to share. Tyler was getting messages from Howie's dad, who has passed away, and he says, "I'm getting a feeling of an unfortunate but silly, funny event that happened at his memorial. Does that make sense?" And Howie's like, "Oh my God, no way. That totally makes sense." And goes on to explain that what happened was one of Howie's dad's friends came up to him at his dad's memorial service and was telling Howie, how amazing his father was, how much he's going to miss him, and so on. And then in the middle of his sentence, he just stops and is like, I gotta go. And he runs out, and Howie gets up and follows him, and he sees this man drop what he thought was a chocolate candy on the ground. So he picks up the candy to try to get it back to the man, and he's like, "You dropped your candy," but the guy was totally gone. And Howie looks down at the chocolate candy in his hand, and it's not chocolate candy, it's poop. This man had an unfortunate stomach situation and just ran out, which I feel like is my absolute worst nightmare. And now that I know that this happened to someone, I'm going to be like, that's going to happen to me. But we all know that Howie is a germaphobe. So chaos kind of ensues at the memorial. He's freaking out. He's putting hot scalding water and alcohol on his hand, and his mother's trying to help him. They're screaming at each other. And everyone at the memorial is like, oh no, these two are not taking the death well. They just thought they were like screaming in sadness, but they were really screaming about poop on Howie's hand. But anyway, yes, Tyler got a message about poop from Howie Mandel's deceased father.
Wow.
And I did check. Howie said he had never shared that story publicly, and I Googled it. I could not find an instance of him sharing any details about his father's memorial, poop included, anywhere online before this reading happened. Another celebrity reading that is particularly of note was the reading Tyler did for Alan Thicke. For a large part of his reading, Tyler shared that he was getting information about a concern for high blood pressure and heart-related issues for Alan and his family, particularly the males in his family. Alan shared that neither the heart problems nor high blood pressure really run in his family, but his sister did have open heart surgery. Tyler says that he gets a sense of stubbornness to take care of his health seriously, and he should really go to a doctor and get checked out if he experienced any symptoms. Alan Thicke kind of made a joke about it. He was like, "Well, okay, Dr. Henry, sure thing." 2 months after this reading, Alan Thicke passed away from a tear in the aorta in his heart, and the leading cause of an aortic tear is high blood pressure.
Wow.
It looks like the actual cause of his aortic tear is unknown. It could have been an aneurysm. They weren't really able to tell, but it could have been high blood pressure, like Tyler said. His wife, Tanya, shared with Henry after Alan's death that she was very on top of him about his health, especially after the reading, but he didn't really take it seriously. Pretty crazy stuff, if you ask me. But moving on, after The Hollywood Medium, Tyler has gone on to write 2 books and have 2 Netflix series. In his 2022 Netflix series, Life After Death with Tyler Henry, there's a really interesting subplot taking place behind the readings he performs. His mom, Teresa, takes an at-home DNA test and finds out that her mother is not biologically her mother. Crazier yet, Teresa expresses relief in this discovery because the woman who she thought was her mother was a convicted murderer. When Teresa was 12, her adoptive mother was sentenced to 2 concurrent life terms in prison for torturing and murdering 2 people.
Oh.
The way in which Teresa's adoptive mother got her from her biological mother is still unknown, but Teresa refers to it as a kidnapping. Pretty darn crazy subplot.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on the 2 major techniques that skeptics and debunkers would claim are the real truth behind every psychic or medium. It's cold reading and hot reading. And at the Tyler Henry Live Show, I was very much on the lookout for these. I'll share my findings on those in a bit, but first I'll explain what cold reading and hot reading is. Cold reading is a set of techniques used by mentalists, psychics, fortune tellers, and mediums that are not legit. A practiced cold reader can quickly obtain a great deal of information by analyzing the person's body language, age, clothing or fashion, hairstyle, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ethnicity, level of education, manner of speech, place of origin, etc. during a line of questioning. Cold readings commonly employ high probability guesses, quickly picking up on signals as to whether their guesses are in the right direction or not. The reader then emphasizes and reinforces any accurate connections while quickly moving on from missed guesses. Psychologists believe that this appears to work because of confirmation bias and the Barnum effect, which is a psychological phenomenon whereby individuals give high accuracy ratings to descriptions of their personality that supposedly are tailored specifically to them, yet which are in fact vague and general enough to apply to a wide range of people. So cold readings can basically be just general statements as in, I see a heart problem with a father figure in your family because heart-related issues are the leading cause of death worldwide and men are twice as likely to have a heart attack over women. Or a cold reading could be something like, you notice the person receiving the reading is wearing a Live Strong bracelet. So the cold reading would be someone close to you had a battle with cancer. Or you're like really obsessed with 2005 fashion trends. Now, I think cold reading is genuinely a skill that people can develop and is impressive in its own right. But if you're passing it off as a paranormal, unexplainable gift when you don't actually have that gift, I think that's wrong. It may not be done intentionally either. Perhaps someone doesn't realize they're just cold reading and good at cold reading, and they don't realize they don't have the gift of being a psychic or a medium. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt there, but it really comes down to the intention behind each unique person. In hot reading, the reader uses information about the person receiving the reading, for example, from a background research or overhearing a conversation, which the receiver is not aware that the reader already knows. The psychic or medium may have clients schedule their appearance ahead of time and then collect information using collaborators who pose as religious missionaries, magazine salespeople, or similar roles. Nowadays, simply Googling the person and finding information from their social media sites or online obituaries. And again, I'm not a debunker or a skeptic myself, but I do think that one should be really looking out for these things in this realm, because if somebody is using cold or hot reading, but passing themselves off as a psychic or a medium, that gives the whole community a bad look. Like, it's already a community in a realm that a lot of people think is fake, or if you're in this community, you must be crazy, right? So we should keep an eye out for anyone in the community who is not the real deal and faking, right?
Yeah.
Now, the last thing before we get into our experience at the live show, I wanted to touch on the elephant in the room, his scribbling. While doing readings, Tyler scribbles on paper as a way to get into an altered state of consciousness. It helps him tune into his subconscious mind, where he finds it's easier to receive messages from beyond. Okay, so it's time for the meat of the podcast, the live show itself. This live show was held at the Grove of Anaheim on December 5th. This was the same venue as the Ancient Aliens live show from Tell Me Your Ghost Story episode 4. That's a fun one. Go give it a listen if you haven't already. Also, the Grove of Anaheim is where Emily and I had our senior prom. So this is clearly a significant venue in my life. Can you share some memories of prom?
Of prom? Oh, God. Well, we went with a kid that was wearing a suit that was like 5 times his size. I think it was his dad's suit.
Yeah, and he provided no explanation. He wasn't like, oh, this is why. It was just big suit.
We had no suitors.
Nope.
Just the
Zero.
big suit.
We're like, oh, we're doing the easy route. We're just going with friends. No one wanted to take us.
No, I believe we went to Cheesecake Factory before.
That
I
sounds
have more
right.
memories of the Cheesecake Factory than the actual dance itself. But
I remember someone brought like those rave gloves where they have lights in the fingers. Do you remember that?
oh, yes. Yeah, kind of looked like they were playing with, remember like the fushigi
Yes. They were doing those moves on the dance floor. I remember a picture of us got posted on the school website at prom.
Oh, good for us. I don't remember that.
I think it's just, it's in my Facebook.
Voted biggest losers.
It's on my Facebook. So like once a year, it's like, remember this from 15 years ago? I rather not.
Most likely to get a UTI.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's it really is a strange place to have a prom. But when we were there at prom, we're like, this is such a lame place. Like, what is this? And then going there as an adult, we're like, this is nice.
As an adult, I can appreciate it.
It was nice. I just think it was so empty. Like that place is meant to fit 1,700 people sitting down.
Wow.
And there was not 1,700 people there at prom. I was like so empty. It's just the memories that I have of it. And like when there's not chairs in there, it's just like empty. And then on the stage is just like a little DJ that like no one knows who it is. Like, I don't know. It was lame. I mean, you go because you're like, I need to go to my senior prom. And then it's like, I don't really remember any of it.
Yeah.
Besides the rave gloves. What'd we get at Cheesecake Factory?
Probably some sliders. Probably shared some sliders.
Sounds good.
I just remember feeling awkward because it was just us two and like we're clearly dressed to go to the dance. And it was like people kind of looked at us and were like, oh, that's sad.
I mean, we were never beating the lesbian allegations. You know, when you're two close friends, best friends in high school, and you don't have many male suitors, the accusations come strong. Okay, but anyway, so we arrive. First order of business was obviously hitting the bar. We got marigaritas, which were holiday-themed margaritas. I kept saying Mary Ritas, which makes more sense, but they add the "ga" in there. Marigaritas.
Marigaritas.
I am never going to pass up either a themed seasonal drink nor a margarita. And this was both of those things. So it was like really a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
And when the bartender was making our marigaritas, which had tahini on the rim, he
inhaled some tahini, yeah.
He started coughing uncontrollably, and we're like, ooh. Like,
I mean, bless his heart, though. He remade the drink, which I thought was nice. I mean, most places I've been to, like, they wouldn't do that. So.
I would have drank it and not had a problem. Yeah. I would think about it, but I would still drink it.
Get a hocked a loogie in there.
And I'm still tipping 18%. I'm hitting 18 on that little iPad. But then we hit the snack bar and we got some nachos with sleazy cheese on top. And we took our bounty to a bar table outside and observed the lobby and the clientele while we consumed our marigaritas and sleazy cheese nachos. And we were looking for any potential signs of hot reading. You know, plants in the lobby, Tyler Henry spies, if you will, people with earpieces listening in, conveying information they were hearing to Tyler himself backstage. And we saw none. However, something did catch my eye and got me wondering. Right after you went through security and before you entered the lobby of the Grove of Anaheim, there was like a little desk set up and it had a couple of computers and iPads on it and several employees, not the Grove of Anaheim employees, but they were like basically timeshare salespeople. Mm-hmm. And on the iPads and computers, you could go up to them and enter your name and email address to be entered to win like a vacation or something. But then they're going to email the hell out of you trying to get you to buy a timeshare, right? So this did raise my eyebrow. One, because...
Your one eyebrow?
My one unibrow. One, because this timeshare setup was not present at the Ancient Aliens show I attended earlier this year. And two, this could be a cleverly disguised mode of hot reading because you're providing your first and last name and your email, and there's potential for this information to go to Tyler Henry's team, where they then Google these people and find out all of their secrets that their social media has to offer, right? So after downing my margarita, I marched up to that booth and I questioned the heck out of those employees working there. I straight up just asked, "Are you employed by Tyler Henry?" And they laughed. They said, "No, here's the marketing agency we work for. It's called Kaleo." And they were wearing polos with the Kaleo logo on it. And I asked them what information they were collecting and where does it go. And they were there marketing Hilton hotels / timeshares. They said they usually have this set up at the Honda Center, which is very close to the Grove of Anaheim. But today they were placed at the Grove of Anaheim. I grilled them some more because of my margarita, and I asked each of the 3 employees questions separately, and they all answered the same way. I even recorded one of them declaring that he does not work for Tyler Henry. I'll place that here.
My name's Cody, and I'm not employed by Tyler Henry by any means.
They were all very nice and believable. After my grilling, I don't think that they were a means of hot reading for Tyler Henry. And I Googled Kaleo, It is a legit marketing agency for hotels and timeshares. It's real. I'm not suspicious of them anymore. If they're listening right now, hi guys. Thank you for putting up with me. Sorry.
Did I see this correctly? So I ran away because that was awkward for me.
Sorry.
Were you touching that man's beard?
His
Did I see something? Maybe that Mary Garita.
I was looking at his polo where it said Kaleo. I took a picture of the
I just
logo.
saw like your hand near his face area and I turned away. I was like, I don't know what's happening.
I just caressed his face. I took a picture of his polo. That could be it. And then I caressed his face, but
Spencer, I'm not saying you need to go through her phone, but maybe you should go through her phone.
Also, a fun little aside, I gave the employees my business card for the podcast, and on the back I have like a long list of all the weird paranormal stuff we talk about on the show, and one of the employees was looking at the card and was like, yeah, I'll listen to the podcast. I do not believe in any of this stuff though. It's all fake. It's not real. And I was like, okay, cool. And she keeps reading the card and she's like, wait. It says psychic dreams here. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, wait, I have those. And I was like, girl, you don't believe in the paranormal, but you have psychic dreams? And she's like, yeah, all the time. I'll dream about big life events and then they'll happen the same week. Girl, girl, open up your mind. Just kidding.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. You're fine in everything that you're doing. Okay, so then we head into the theater and we had a very entertaining patron in front of us. Do you want to run us through the pre-show that we were lucky enough to receive?
Yeah. So it was just, two older ladies out on the town, right? The one woman going through her phone of pictures of dogs and cats, lots of cats. We were watching like a bunch of cat photos, and then there was one photo, remember, where it just said lost cat. And we're like, oh shit, the cat's lost, right? Right. Yeah. But then the cat came back. So
yeah.
I hope that wasn't a posthumous screenshot she maybe took or something. Who knows? But
there was a whole story.
There were a lot of dog butts, like the behinds of a dog that was clearly like too fast for them to get in front of. There were a lot of sidewalks, just like maybe like
I don't know what that
streets
was about.
That she felt like needed some work done.
Like,
I'm not sure.
20 at a time.
She was, the poor lady she took with her was kind of held hostage, right? Every single photo.
Just a full review of her photo app.
Yeah. And I was saying, like, you don't even want to see like your loved one's vacation photos, right? I wasn't there. I don't need to see that.
But when it's a complete stranger, the most entertaining thing you've ever seen.
Dog butts, sidewalks, and lost cats.
There were some dog butt videos too, just like a normal looking dog just on a walk, and she's just filming it from behind. And she's making her friend watch this.
Every single photo she had.
I loved it. I wish we could have had more.
Yeah.
I wish it was on the big screens. So after our delightful pre-show, the lights dim and there's like a Tyler Henry montage that plays on the screens, like his craziest readings from all his shows. And they put it over some like Toyota-thon music to get the crowd all ramped up. And it was like really high quality, good clips from his show. And then just like random like Getty images of him at like events, just like landscape mode. It's all like horizontal. And then it'll just be like these vertical shots with like black on the side with like Getty images on the side. It's like, you could have paid for the Getty image.
And then there was like one where it's like, because he has like such a hard side part, and then there was one image where it was like straight down the middle. It was shocking. It was like, whoa! I think I came out of my seat a little.
It was too much of a dichotomy of it all. You know what I mean? Like, just
there should have been a little warning, little part change warning there.
Warning, middle part incoming. Prepare yourself. So after the Toyota-thon music with all his Getty images and footage, Mr. Henry glides out on stage. The crowd erupts. People are crying already. It was really, really something to see. He started out the show with like a monologue of sorts. explaining how he found his gift, how he strengthened it, how he came to give readings to celebrities, to getting his shows, his books, etc. And then he went into some FAQ of sorts. He explained what he's come to understand happens after we die and questions like that. And then it was go time, the audience readings. How this worked was he would announce to everyone some details of the person or persons coming through. If it applied to you, you raised your hand and he would add some more detail. If the details still applied to you, you kept your arm raised. Usually that whittled it down to one person. This person would then come into the walkway of the theater where they had set up several microphones up and down the aisles. He put on another montage of crazy readings from his shows on the TVs, and he scribbled for about 3 minutes, which was kind of crazy to watch because he was not only scribbling, but they like dimmed the lights on stage so it was all dark, and they had like kind of an ominous like uplighting on him, and he was like gesturing and making faces and like having full-on conversations, and it was like, okay, like he's actually talking to dead people right now. And it wasn't scary, but it was just kind of crazy to watch.
It was a little eerie. I had to hold on to a little bit.
Especially after the marigaritas. So after his scribbling, the lights came back on. He was like, wow, there's a lot of grandmas here in spirit tonight. But he said, first off, the 2 strongest reads that he was getting right off the bat were 2 very different personalities. He said one was a very loud and energetic group of African American people from New Orleans, and the other was a soft-spoken couple from South Korea. He went forward with the New Orleans family first. A couple people raised their hands, and then he said, I'm getting 2 T names, an older big T and a younger little T. After he said that, one lady was left with her hand raised and she came down to the mic. And I recognized her. She was right in front of us in line for the snack bar. She got a hot tea at the snack bar right before us. But the big T and the little T names tracked for her. She said her grandfather Thomas passed, and I think she said her cousin with a T name. I forget the cousin's T name, but he passed when he was in his 30s, and all of her family, including her, grew up in New Orleans. He said, I'm getting the feeling that little T died on a day of celebration, and a family member was there. Is that correct? And she said, yes, their aunt was there. Unfortunately, it was an act of gun violence, and he died on his mom's birthday. He said, I'm seeing the Auntie Anne's logo. Does Auntie Anne's pretzels mean anything to you? And she was like, oh my God. My Aunt Margaret, it was like an M name. I don't remember. My Aunt Margaret never went by Margaret. She went by Anne, and we all called her Auntie Anne. He then said, I'm seeing a lost birth certificate and a move. And she said, a couple years ago, we moved to Long Beach, and I lost both me and my son's birth certificates in the move. So we had to reprint both of them. Then he said, I'm seeing you going into a line of social work. Is that a goal of yours or something you're working towards right now? And she said, I'm graduating in 2025 with my degree in social work. Literally crazy. With each revelation, the crowd would gasp, and you could see how much it was moving the lady who was receiving the reading. And there was like a lot more that I didn't catch. Like, this was all I could get typing a note on my phone. Thank you. But there was like a lot like that I know I didn't catch and am remembering. But for all these I'm going to share, it's not an exhaustive list of everything that he read for those people. Like, he did so much more than I could jot down. But next he covered the soft-spoken South Korean couple. A lady came forward. Both of her parents had died, and they had all lived in South Korea for the beginning of this lady's life. During the reading, what really struck me is she's talking to this lady like he already knows her. Like, he's like, okay, now you're brothers. And it wasn't like, do you have siblings? Do you have a brother? Do you have multiple brothers? He straight away was like, so your brothers, they have a sibling rivalry, right? And she was like, yes. So that was pretty wild to see. He brought up that he was seeing the song Secret Agent Man and asked if that had any significance. And she was like, yeah, my dad would always take phone calls from this one man in private and would never share who he was or what they were talking about. And we were like, are you a secret agent? He said that her deceased parents were not sad about being buried far apart from each other, that they're together in the afterlife, and that's all that matters. And she said, yes, her dad is buried in South Korea. Her mom is buried here. And she always felt bad about that, but she didn't have to feel bad about that anymore. He said, your sign from your dad has to do with trees, right? And she said, yes, pine cones are my sign from my dad. So those two, the very first ones were definitely the strongest ones with the most specific information to come through. But after that, he said, I had a word come to me in the dressing room. I didn't even know what it means. I had to Google it. And it's something being shown to me again right now. It's kratom.
What was it?
Kratom.
Kratom.
Do you know what it is?
No.
Okay. It's a relatively new drug. The FDA and laws and everything hasn't fully caught up to it yet. I'm like fully positive it's going to be illegal within the upcoming years. But right now you can buy it at gas stations, which is like super scary.
What?
It's highly addictive. It gives you a high similar to opiates.
Wow. Gas stations?
You can,
like next to the rhino pills?
yes, you can buy kratom. It's scary. It's 100% going to be illegal, like in 2 years probably. But when he brought up kratom, a group of 4 girls went up to the mic and he expressed that he was getting communication from someone who used kratom. And then he got the feeling of this person trying an unknown drug for the first time. And he got the feeling that this person was like, I'm just going to try this once, but then I accidentally died from it. And these girls said that's exactly right. It was their cousin, I think they said it was. They said he died from a drug overdose, but they never found out what the drug was. He said it was a J name, and they said, yes, Javier. For this one, I feel like the messages were more highly personal to them, and they weren't really sharing details, so I didn't write too much down, but you could tell that the messages really moved this family.
Mm-hmm.
Next, he said kind of a silly thing, a little messy, perhaps. He was like, now I'm getting a message from someone's grandpa who cheated on grandma with grandma's sister. Is that hitting for anyone? And alas, yes, it did for 2 girls, but we had to go potty really bad, so we missed their reading.
I know, kind of.
It was
I'm
bad
sure it
timing,
it would have been a good story, but
it was an emergency situation.
it was.
And then when we came back from going potty, Tyler was just like walking in the crowd, and we're like, oh. We missed him.
I think, well, he said, like, if anything super sensitive comes up, I will
true.
come to you.
Whisper in your ear.
Yeah.
But again, that was an emergency situation. The next reading took a really long time to place, like, whose family member this was. He was like, I'm getting a group of 3 girls and a deceased woman named Becky. And many people raised their hands, including a woman in front of us who was very jazzed about potentially getting called up. And interesting, one of Tyler's team members went up to her during the show, and I saw him say something like, stand up. And I was like, is this a plant? What's happening? And then she did, but then it turned out it wasn't her that was getting this reading, which was interesting. I don't know why he said that.
I don't know either. Yeah, a couple of them where it seemed like there were a couple people in the audience who felt like that was the read for them. So I kind of had the thought, like, maybe it's not the person that he originally, but then he kind of is able to change.
Yeah, once he sees someone, maybe he's like
he can zone in
to tune in, but they're maybe not originally.
He can get into the auto zone.
Yeah. Yes, drop into zone. But I kind of got the feeling for this one. He was saying some things that like maybe seemed like it didn't hit that well, but I do remember the most notable thing from this one was he was like, I'm getting this feeling of being left at school, like my parent didn't come to pick me up. And she's like, oh yeah, I did that. I left my son at school. I forgot to get him.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, okay, sure, let's move on.
I also just got like mom vibes from her, and you like talk to your mom about something like, you remember when this happened? That didn't happen. That didn't happen. That's the kind of vibe I got from her a little bit.
Yeah. Before we forget, can we interject for a second? Because I want to make sure this gets in there. Can you share the inaccurate reading someone in your life provided to someone once? You don't have to say their name.
I won't. Yeah, so I can get this person in contact with you. I think they would be great for your show. But yeah, this person believes that they have psychic abilities, and at a restaurant was harassing this couple that was just trying to enjoy maybe like a special dinner. And this person couldn't keep it to themselves and had to interject at their table and say, I'm sensing something. Like, who was the person in your life who loved green beans? And just like wouldn't stop repeating that. And this couple was like, they were like being held hostage by this person I know who was insistent on there being some connection to a deceased person who loved green beans.
And it didn't hit for them.
It was not a hit. Huge miss. Huge miss.
Also, who like loves green beans? I don't think I've known someone who's like, I love green beans. It's not
something that you would use to communicate, right? Like if you had one shot of communicating to loved ones still on Earth, I wouldn't think green beans.
Everyone's like, yeah, green beans are fine. Anyway, thank you for sharing. Yeah. Just had to get that in for this apropos episode. So for the next reading, this was the second to last reading, he called out for a grandma that passed away in 2024. And there were several raised hands, but he just pulled this person out of the audience and was like, it's you. And he pulled this guy up and he goes, did you know you were your grandma's favorite? And the guy's like, yes, of course, I was grandma's favorite. And then he goes, I'm getting your grandma doing a finger wave. And she could communicate a lot in just a finger wag. Is that accurate? And it was. And he brought up chanclas. And he was like, would she throw a chancla? And he was like, yes, but she also kept all my shoes and sandals from when I was a baby. And for some reason, she loved those so much. So I buried her with one of my little chanclas, which that was crazy. Mm-hmm. And he's like, she's showing me a bunch of roses. And then the guy said that he brought her roses every single week when he would come to visit. And I think every woman in that place melted right in that moment. It was really nice. So for the last reading, he said, someone's grandma Dawn is coming through strong. And Grandma Dawn coming through strong. And he called out that she had 2 battles with cancer. And a couple came down to the mics and he said something like, is your mom like all up in your business? Because Grandma Dawn is saying you need to be with your own family and your mom kind of needs to stay out of it. And the girl was like, oh my God, no way. Yes, my mom bought this big plot of land and wants us all to move into this mansion on the land, all my sisters and their spouses and me and my boyfriend. But no one wants to do that. Like they want to have their own lives and their own places. And she was just like, this is so crazy. Like no one outside of my family knows this. And Tyler also said, did you paint birdhouses with your grandma? And she's like, oh my God, yes. When we were little kids, she would always buy wooden birdhouses and we would paint them. So then the show was over and he put his little scribble pad away and there was like a collective sigh from the audience because everyone kind of realized at that moment that their chance to be read was over. But once the show ended and people were shuffling out, I was scouring the crowd looking for people who got the readings. And luckily I ran into 2 of them. The very first lady with the New Orleans family and the very last couple. So I ran into the New Orleans lady first. I introduced myself and I asked her if there's any way Tyler could have externally gotten this information. Is it posted on social media, etc.? And she said 100% no. She's like, there's no way he could have known all of that besides talking to my deceased loved ones. And she's like, I've been talking to them recently. I've been speaking with my deceased loved ones. I asked them to send me a message here tonight, and I'm so happy that it happened. I even wore my Mardi Gras socks from New Orleans. And she pulls up her pant leg and shows me her Mardi Gras socks, which was just wild. That was the first thing he said. He was like, New Orleans, which, I mean, in a crowd of 1,700 people, there's bound to be people from every state, or people who have family in every state. But that it felt important and connected. Mm-hmm. And then I ran into the last couple that got a reading and I asked them the same thing. And the girl was like, there's 100% no way. I've never posted these things on social media. I've never told anyone outside of my family about my mom's plot of land and her scheme to get us all to live in the house. There's no way. And she said, honestly, I was hoping
to talk to the dog.
Yeah.
Right?
She's like, I was hoping that my recently passed away dog would have come through, and that's why I'm here, but I'm happy to have connected with my grandma.
Damn it, Mima.
So now, as a cherry on top for this episode, I wanted to get a trusted opinion on Tyler Henry from someone who is also a medium, who I fully trust and 100% know is the real deal. And listeners, y'all will know and trust her too. It is Ivy from our last episode, The Magic House. I purposefully saved her input until the end after I presented all the evidence from our findings at the live show so as not to skew any conclusions. But here is what Ivy said about Tyler Henry. I think he's incredible. As a fan of his work, I think Tyler Henry is such an authentic person, and I admire his humility and the care he puts into the work he does. I don't know how anyone can watch him and not be moved. He's the real deal as a medium, and I love his live show, and it feels like a significant moment in time. He has that platform to show so much compelling evidence week after week for the reality of the phenomenon of mediumship. And I think every working medium owes him a debt of gratitude for his vulnerability, putting his gift out there. I admire him so much, and he gives me so much hope. I love that he has a sense of lightness and joy and a sense of humor with his work too. So after our experience at the live show and our expert opinion from Ivy, I'm confident in saying that Tyler Henry is the real deal. He gets the Tell Me Your Ghost Story Seal of Approval. Tyler, I will be sending you a graphic of our seal of approval, and you can use that on your websites and social medias. You're welcome, Tyler. I'm just kidding. And all jokes aside, I really do think he's legit. I didn't see any signs of hot reading, cold reading. I kept thinking with all the readings, is this so vague that it could apply to me? And I couldn't relate to one single thing during any reading that he said, not even a part of a reading. He was giving super, super specific information that consistently hit with the person giving a reading. What do you think? Do you feel the same way about this?
Yeah. Yeah, I what you said. I agree. Too specific. I mean, but then he wasn't like 100% on all the time too.
True. But then I've heard of people saying they hear something in a reading and then it makes sense to them later. Or they go to their sister and they tell them about the reading and then that thing hits for their sister and not them. Like they didn't know whatever part of the information. Or maybe he's interpreting it wrong. I know that mediums have signs for different things. Like they get a mental image and it's not always like the full picture. I know.
He was saying it's just like, what was an example?
He said
something with an explosion, a toilet and an explosion.
He said like an exploding wheelchair.
Oh yeah.
At first he was like, did they have a wheelchair that exploded? But then he realized that means in this life they were in a wheelchair and they're exploding it now that they're on the other side to show that they're not in that state now. They're like able-bodied and not in pain anymore. They don't have the disease that killed them or caused pain to them. So it's a lot of signs. I know there's some signs that don't make sense. I know that even from watching Teresa Caputo, she'll share like weird things that she sees and it means another thing and they come to learn that. So maybe if he says something, he's just not interpreting the sign right, maybe. But anyway, thank you, Emily, for your co-host duties, and you're welcome for introducing you to your new favorite medium of all time, Tyler Henry.
Yeah.
Please show us your support by giving us a like, rate, review, subscribe, and a follow. Follow us on Instagram for photos from the show and updates at Tell Me Your Ghost Story Podcast. If you're listening to audio only, there's video accompaniment over on YouTube, and we got some fun stuff on TikTok at Tell Me Your Ghost Story Pod. If you have a true paranormal story you'd like to share, please email it to tellmeyourghoststorypodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, my friends, good night to all, and to all a good night. Bye.